we understood the diagnosis, but we also had faith. I was handed a brochure that said there's a problem with your baby. I wish I would have known then what I know now.
Like we face often in life, sometimes we come face to face with aspects of life that are just impossible. We are unable to see any way around it, any way that will work out. Now, when I think of situations that would really challenge my faith more than anything, they all involve my children. I want to say what we all know. Life doesn't have that crystal ball. But there might actually be a crystal ball. Not one that tells us exactly what is going to happen, but rather tells us the God who has this world in his hands can be trusted, and with him the impossible is possible. Let's consider facing the impossible. I'm Jake McCandless, and you're listening to Hold On, a podcast where I explore the dynamics of faith in our modern world and encourage you to hold on and keep the faith. In this episode, we're talking to Ralph and Evelyn Mann, who received this diagnosis that the birth of their son was going to present some impossible situations. Now, this may really strike a chord with you if you're facing health struggles or life battles with your children. But for each of us, there's a principle here that nothing is impossible with God.
Well, I was a joyous, happy newlywed when I found out that we were going to have our first child. It was a very, very exciting time for us. We go to the sonogram appointment where we're going to find out the baby gender, and we're in the waiting room, just not quite giggling, but I mean, we're older parents, but we were just full of joy, about to see the first picture of a sonogram of our child. And when we went and had the sonogram done, there was two techs there. I think one was learning and the other one was actually doing the test. And there weren't a lot of words. We really didn't, had no experience with this, so we didn't know if that was normal or not normal. But when I knew things were not quite the way they should have been is when they had us wait in the doctor's office. And we waited quite a while. And then the doctor finally came in with a handful of paperwork, which I assumed were from the sonogram. And he told us we were having a boy. And at that point, we were ecstatic. Our joy, being ecstatic was kind of cut off by the next few sentences but he's not growing. And I thought, well, that's what babies do. They grow. So I don't know that I fully comprehended what he was trying to tell us. But I got enough of the gist to know there's something amiss. And we would have to go get a high-level sonogram for some experts to take a look and see what was actually going on. And that was really the beginning. And that's the time when I faced my fear. And I had those moments of fear for sure. I didn't know what was going to happen, had no clue what was going on. And from there, we went to the high-level sonogram and found out it could be one of three diagnoses. Thanatophoric dysplasia. There's another diagnosis, and the third one I remember was being osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bone disease. It could be anywhere in there, but from there, I think my husband and I were really firm. We weren't going to have an abortion or a therapeutic abortion or anything like that. I remember we went into a sonogram appointment, and they put the wand on my stomach. And I looked at the screen, and there was Samuel dancing. He was wiggle, 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 wiggle. And I just, I looked at my husband, he looked at me, and we left with that image in our mind. There's no way, we would think about an abortion. And they kept asking.
The odds were against Samuel. Ralph and Evelyn were told he's not going to survive. You guys need to consider an abortion. But the couple had this incredible peace, this unexplainable peace. They shared with me after they left that high-level ultrasound. They get in their vehicle, they're headed home after hearing this devastating news. And they turn to one another and both report that they have this peace that everything was going to be okay. This unexplainable peace covered them, and it carried them, and it's carrying them today.
I would say it was about week 31. I was put on bed rest, and I delivered Samuel at week 35. So he was early. And we wanted him to be in my belly as long as possible. The book is called Miracle in My Living Room because there's a bunch of little miracles all in there. And one of them is that when I went on bed rest, a week later, I started leaking amniotic fluid. I went into my doctor's office. They immediately put me over to the hospital. I was put on bed rest in the hospital. They said, typically when this happens, a child is delivered in 3 days of having that amniotic fluid leaking. That was week 32, and my son was delivered at week 35. So that is one of those little miracles of, okay, I'm here and they're telling me that, Samuel's going to come, and it could be coming in the next few days, which I think would have been too early for him to come. I held on and was on bed rest, and I had a C-section at week 35. So that to me is another miracle that happened. So he was delivered. And I prayed that I would hear him cry when he was delivered. And it was a C-section. I did not hear Samuel cry, but I knew that he was alive and kicking, and they were taking him into the neonatal intensive care unit. And even though I didn't hear him cry, I saw his beautiful little face all scrunched up, and he was crying. But it's one of those moments, that you fall in love immediately. And then he was taken to the NICU. The next few weeks was pretty intensive. He was put on something called an oscillator. It's a specialized ventilator that delivers 200 breaths per minute. He had to be on morphine when he was on this oscillator because he had to be still. It was quite intensive. And I remember a nurse coming to me and telling me that she didn't think that Samuel would ever come off of the oscillator. And I heard those words, and my reaction was, you just wait. You just watch what happens. I heard it, but I dismissed it. And a week later, he was off the oscillator. So that's another little prediction that was given that Samuel defied that odd. He has defied many odds. And there are several challenges in the book that talk about those odds. And
how long was it before he went home?
The basic struggle was Samuel, like I talked about earlier, was on a specialized ventilator called the oscillator. And he got off of that, and then he went on a regular ventilator in the NICU. So he came home at 6 months. Getting Samuel home was a big victory. It was a huge victory. As a matter of fact, we had a discharge meeting, and we were told in a very kind way. They were just trying to help us to understand that some children are discharged and they could be back in the hospital on the next shift. It could be the next day. It could be, And I just knew in my heart of hearts, down in my being, I said, we're not coming back here. And he didn't. He's been in the hospital for some surgeries. Well, not surgeries, for a hearing test and so forth, but nothing overnight, thank God.
Nothing overnight since then?
No, I mean, he's had a couple sleep studies. I mean, obviously you have to go overnight for those, right? So no.
So I read Evelyn's book, Miracle in My Living Room, visited with her on a couple occasions, met Samuel, have researched this condition, this lethal form of dwarfism, and found out how very few survive. Around the world, very few survive. And all go through a great struggle. And then to hear just how many few times Samuel has been in the hospital, to hear that now he's off the ventilator. Just recently he was part of Make-A-Wish and had the chance to go to Disney World. Now that does not mean the journey's been easy. It's tough, and it's tough now. But it's remarkable what God has done with Samuel.
Dr. Lyon was trying to contain his smile about Samuel's positive progress. He said, "Once again, my crystal ball is wrong," and admitted that he didn't believe that Samuel would be doing this well. He tried to temper our excitement and explained that there are rocky roads ahead. His feeling of go-home time is about a week from now. Both Evelyn and I enjoyed seeing Lyon's surprise.
Samuel can be defined in statistics, but what defines Samuel is his joy and his spirit and his laughter and his smile and the way that the whole world stops when he focuses on you and just flashes this brilliant smile, and everything else in life just melts away. Nothing else seems important, but in that moment, you're getting this piece of heaven on earth just in that moment. Samuel is my son, so I can say these things, and you're probably, oh, you're just talking about your child. But I know what Samuel has is special, and I know that it's meaningful because of the reaction that other people have when they see him. So we went in a restaurant, and he was in the stroller, and there was a lady and gentleman and a couple other people sitting in a booth. And as we turned the corner, Samuel turned and focused on this lady and just gave her one of his brilliant smiles. I did not know that this had happened. And after we wanted to go pay, the waitress said, "Oh, no, it's taken care of." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Who?" And the waitress pointed to this lady at the other table. So I went to talk to her, and we introduced ourselves. And at the end of the time, I exchanged my email. And I would say about 2 or 3 days later, I got an email back from her. And she said that Samuel saw into her and made her rethink her life, where she's at, what is she doing, what is her purpose in life. I think we all want to have that impact on other people. And Samuel is nonverbal, so he doesn't say a word, but he was able to make a connection, and he's done that countless of times. It's not just in that circumstance. So as a mother, I can say that Samuel gives me great joy, and his presence means a lot to me, which is normal that a mom would say that. I see the impact that Samuel has on other people, and then I know it's not just me seeing it.
I was reminded that God is the miracle-working God through this story. And I was reminded that God could do the impossible. But I asked Evelyn if there was a time that they questioned God. And she let us peer into a low point in this process. Evelyn and Ralph were spiritual rock stars through this time. But I share this because remaining faithful doesn't mean that we're going to do it perfectly.
I don't think we did. I think in the very beginning, my very, very beginning, back when I was still pregnant, I think the fear that got me is I had no idea what was happening and feeling like there's no way out. I have no way out of this. There's nothing I can do.
Right.
That despair was definitely there. It was overwhelming. And I'd like to tell you that my faith in that moment just, snapped my fingers and it was okay. But in that moment, I couldn't see it. I was too absorbed by finding out the news that this was happening to me, and wanting a way out and not having a way out. And so I went home. I was driving when I was feeling that. I was driving on the freeway, and I had a thought of, well, I know one way to make sure this, there's one way out of this. I'll just run off the road. And it was one of those terrifying, scary thoughts that you kind of go, did I just think that? Did that really just go through my head? Like, that's how intense the pressure was, because I wanted a way out. And I went home and I was scared to tell my husband, because I didn't want him to think I was crazy. I didn't want him to think of me any differently. But I knew I had to tell him. So we sat down on the couch, and I told him, and he looked at me and he goes, yeah, I've been having some, thoughts too. And in that moment, I confessed to him and he confessed to me. And when we finished doing that, we hugged each other and it was all gone. I never had that feeling again.
I greatly appreciated Evelyn being so open about that moment of frustration. But throughout the time I interviewed her, I kept prodding her and asking her, did you question God? Did you feel like a victim? Do you feel like Samuel's a victim? And she continually took me back to the joy that they have in Samuel. It's easy when things doesn't go our way to get frustrated with God. But as Laura Jones shared with us in a previous episode, if you abandon God, who's going to walk with you through this? If you abandon God, who are you going to trust to do the impossible? Would you hold on to the one who makes the impossible possible? I can't thank Evelyn, Ralph, and Samuel enough for letting us hear their story. And I want to encourage you, you need to read this whole story. The book is Miracle in My Living Room, the story of a little man. You can find it on Amazon. You can also go to Evelyn's website, miracleman, and that's 2Ns.com. Beautiful website. You can find her blog where she also blogs about what's going on with Samuel, what's going on with her life. Samuel has been featured on several shows, and you can find links there on the website as well. Now, I have a podcast face, but not the star of the story in today's episode. 13-year-old Samuel has a magical smile. You have to check him out at holdonpodcast.com, and you've got to meet him. Thank you for listening to Hold On, my podcast where I explore the dynamics of our faith in our modern world and encourage you to keep the faith. If you've enjoyed this episode and you feel that this can make an impact with someone in your life, please share it with them. Subscribe now to keep up with the latest episodes and visit holdonpodcast.com or find us on Facebook at Hold On Podcast or find me on Twitter and Instagram at StandFirmJake to find out more about how you can hold on.